Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. We will continue to study the Mahayana Shurangama Sutra. Today there is heavy rain and thunder here. This is quite rare normally. I remember in the past when we first started teaching the Shurangama Sutra, there were also some similar occurrences. Of course here it might not be anything special. Yesterday we heard the sound of music outside. Today it is the sound of thunder.
Wow.
Is it all right? Today we will continue to study the Mahayana Shurangama Sutra. In the process of learning, everyone should, just as I mentioned yesterday, not feel tired or suffer, or generate a mind of weariness, or feel an attitude of indifference. You must let go of all these mindsets. Instead, you should have a mind that appreciates how rare this opportunity is. Because a human rebirth is difficult to obtain, and the Buddha Dharma is difficult to encounter. Indeed, in our current era and world, Buddha Dharma like this is truly very difficult to obtain. Everyone knows that there are learning opportunities in any country. However, these worldly studies are basically for the sake of survival and for obtaining happiness or success in this present lifetime. This is the nature of such knowledge. Truly, the many problems of human life, both visible and invisible to our eyes, and the question of the ultimate reality of all phenomena, as well as these profound truths spanning lifetime after lifetime, almost all educational systems will never touch upon them. Therefore, when we are teaching the Buddha Dharma, apart from what our sixth sense faculties can perceive, many profound truths that we simply cannot imagine can be learned right here. So during the learning process, you must absolutely have a mind of yearning. It is not like completing a task every day, just sitting in the ranks of those listening to the Dharma. If aside from this you have no yearning or desire for progress, you might not necessarily attain the true Buddha Dharma. I personally believe and feel that in today's world there is Theravada Buddhism, Han Buddhism, and Tibetan Buddhism. However, within Tibetan Buddhism we can say, speaking without any exaggeration, there is a lot of systematic knowledge like this, from foundational knowledge of Buddhism to the most profound levels of knowledge, as well as highly specific methods for actual practice, including the practice of Mahayana bodhicitta, the practice of renunciation, and so forth. There are many actual practices that are extremely complete, and their lineages have always been unbroken teachings. Thus it can be said that, in a certain sense, nowadays in the Tibetan region, they exist in a relatively complete manner. So regarding this point, everyone must strive to obtain these pith instructions during your human life. After hearing them, some people seem as if they have truly delved deeply into the Sutra Pitaka. Some people just gloss over it on the surface. They do not go further to delve deeply. Therefore, in every class, no matter which master, which Khenpo or Khenmo is teaching, we should have a mindset of cherishing this rare opportunity and receive it with a respectful and joyful mind. In this way, a person's mindset is extremely important. If the mind is adjusted well, then the body will not feel tired when doing anything, nor will there be a feeling of suffering. If our mind is not adjusted well, even for the slightest matter, some of us who are lazy even find eating and going to the restroom extremely tiring and stressful. So I think that if we truly want to live in this world, we must not only live for our own survival, but more importantly, live for our future lives and for the sake of sentient beings. In this regard, everyone must definitely, sometimes there is a kind of external coercive method. A while ago, after I came down, on the one hand I was having a medical checkup, and on the other hand there were some matters to attend to. I did not teach for a period of time then. It seemed I was incredibly busy every day, but in the end it seemed a lot of time was just wasted. So ultimately for myself, in order not to waste time and to make this human life a little more meaningful, I voluntarily signed up saying, I want to continue teaching the Shurangama Sutra this year. Otherwise people around me might all say, because you are old now, because you have retired, because of poor health. Using all kinds of excuses, they would suggest that I not teach at all. But I think if I have this kind of mindset, it might be a bit better. So I also voluntarily said, let me teach. If I hadn't taught, probably no one would have said much this time. By the same token, I hope every one of our Dharma friends, on the one hand, consciously makes some arrangements to study, and on the other hand, we study together, relying on an external form of control. For example, when we listen to teachings and have discussions, there are many things where, if left to ourselves, if we don't go, relying on the external Sangha creates a sort of forced feeling. This way is also very helpful for learning. Now we will continue with this teaching. Yesterday we previously discussed, within Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's perfect penetration through the ear faculty, the 14 kinds of fearlessness. Among the 14 kinds of fearlessness, previously we talked about fearlessness amidst the 8 difficulties. We basically covered them all. Among them, regarding the 7th fearlessness amidst difficulty yesterday, it is actually fearlessness of being bound by fetters and cans. The 7th is fearlessness of fetters and cans. The 8th is fearlessness amidst the difficulty of thieves. If we divide it according to its structural outline, it can be divided like this. Next, today should be the 9th. What follows is fearlessness regarding the 3 poisons. First is fearlessness regarding greed, then fearlessness regarding anger, and fearlessness regarding ignorance. Because for each of our fearlessness, the first part talks about how Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, through his own method of inward contemplation, attained such a state. The latter part talks about how, through his blessing power and majestic power, he enables sentient beings to separate from these sufferings. So today we will start from the 9th, fearlessness of the poison of greed. Once my faculty of hearing had become merged with the enlightened nature of hearing, and so had gained independence from perceived objects, then no object, no matter how enticing, could affect me. Here it is also the same, because our ear faculty begins by hearing sounds. When hearing sounds through practice, one finally illuminates the mind and sees the true nature. After that, one separates from all external sound objects. Because he has perfect penetration of the 6 faculties, form, sound, smell, taste, and touch are all mutually functioning. They do not obstruct each other. For this reason, any external form, including beautiful forms or other forms, will not cause him any wavering at all, nor will they pose any harm. This speaks of his kind of state. Then, relying on this power, therefore I can cause beings who have a great deal of desire to break free of their desire. So relying on the blessings of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, by reciting the name of him, or if we pray to and remember him, in this way it can cause all beings with an affinity, that is to say, beings with a great deal of desire. Actually, many beings in our desire realm have relatively severe desires. Many beings have extremely severe minds of desire. Thus these beings with severe desires, relying on this blessing power of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, should be able to separate from all their desires. In the Universal Gateway chapter of our Lotus Sutra, what is actually taught in it basically touches upon all 14 kinds of fearlessness. At that time, the Lotus Sutra also stated, if there are beings with much sexual desire, if they constantly mindfully revere Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they will become free from desire. If there are some beings whose desire is very severe, if they constantly remember and revere Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they can achieve freedom from desire. Therefore, normally in our worldly lives, everyone knows that the so-called 3 poisons bring harm to us. That is indeed extremely severe, because it is called a poison. Indeed, poison has no benefit, therefore for our mind stream it is also meaningless. Some people might think that desire is very joyful. Isn't it called love? Love has many things, like beautiful romance and so on. Wow! The thunder is very loud, isn't it? The thunder here today, if one feels so-called love is supposed to be very good, of course this is what some people in our world say. In the world there are also some people who believe that freedom from desire is a merit. Another portion of people feels that greed is also a kind of enjoyment, and they rely on it to obtain happiness. But in reality, just as in the Tattvasiddhi Sastra, it was also mentioned before, all desires are ultimately suffering. All desires are ultimately suffering. Why are they ultimately all suffering? Because their nature is separation. They will definitely depart in the end. Since they will depart, if you feel very happy in the beginning, then you will certainly be in pain in the end. So if someone wishes to free their mind stream from desire, making it less severe, if they constantly pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, then relying on his invisible blessing power, the fire of desire within their own mind stream will be extinguished in a very short time, because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he attained freedom from desire relying on the ear faculty. So relying on him, there is also this kind of interaction, and relying on this power of dependent origination, it can allow the desires in our mind stream to be severed in a very short time. This is extremely beneficial. Then next is the 10th, fearlessness of the poison of anger. Once sounds were so purified that they ceased being objects of perception. Then the ear faculty and its objects became completely interfused, so that there was nothing that perceived and nothing that was perceived. It says here, because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, through pure sounds or the hearing of sounds, he completely realized that sounds fundamentally lack inherent existence. And since they lack inherent existence, they do not have these true external objects of sound. And because the objects of sound do not exist, the faculties and objects, that is, the 5 faculties and the 5 objects, are completely interfused, with both ceasing to exist independently. They all merge into one within the Dharma realm. Thus there is no perceiving and perceived, no subject and object, or that which corresponds and that which is corresponded to. Generally speaking, sound is the external object, and the ear faculty is the perceiving subject. But in reality, if the faculty and object are interfused, then all objects and perceiving subjects have absolutely no duality. Because he attained such a state, therefore I can cause beings burdened by anger and hatred to be free of their enmity, relying on such accomplishments from Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's causal stages. And relying on his blessing power, he can cause all those whose mind streams are burdened by extremely severe anger and hatred. Sentient beings nowadays truly have extremely severe hatred. Recently I have also been paying attention to some of the wars between Israel and the Gaza Strip. Indeed, seeing those scenes of ruins one after another, seeing such extremely horrific scenes, sometimes I feel, why is the hatred in the mind streams of these sentient beings so severe? There are innocent civilians who are inevitably dragged into the flames of war. They are senselessly rounded up and murdered. It is truly sometimes, from our own individual mind streams when hatred arises, it is also very terrifying. A person with a very bad temper, generally speaking, when you generate hatred originally, we possess the Tathagata Garbha and can illuminate the mind and see the true nature. But all those states are swept away completely. Nothing is of use anymore. In a fit of anger one might do extremely unwise things, so sentient beings are indeed very frightening. Therefore, if these angry beings among us pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, these great poisons of hatred in the mind streams of sentient beings will all depart one by one. Because hatred causes us to fall into hell, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra also says, "You bhikshus, toward a piece of burnt wood, do not generate a malicious mind." Why? All sentient beings fall into hell because of a malicious mind. Bhikshus, you should not generate a malicious mind toward ordinary burnt wood. The malicious mind here refers to hatred. Why is that? Because all sentient beings indeed fall into hell relying on this malicious mind. So I think that in our current era, sometimes people call it a civilized era, a peaceful era. But it seems like this current civilized and peaceful era has completely passed. Many wars all over the world all rely on a few individual leaders, because some leaders, relying on the hatred within their mind streams, blindly give orders, and in the end they cause countless civilians, commoners, and soldiers to all ultimately lose their lives in various situations. It is extremely pitiful. And what is the ultimate result brought about? Actually, whether it is the killers or those being killed, they all fall into hell. Because if one dies on the battlefield, the deceased will also fall into hell. They die in a state of extreme hatred at that time. And as for the people who kill them, it goes without saying, not only these human beings, our current science and technology, are also highly destructive, including artillery shells and bombs. As for these, if a shell is fired or a submarine attacks, the immeasurable sentient beings in the surrounding area are all killed without exception. Therefore, I think our era is truly an era of hatred right now. It is also an era of greed and an era of ignorance. Many of our civilized eras or happy eras are drawing to a close. It seems to be this way. It seems that in every corner of the entire world the flames of war are spreading, which is extremely terrifying. So in such a special era, as practitioners, we have no other way, not to mention that we have no way. Even the so-called United Nations, they just hold meetings and make appeals. Other than that, they are completely powerless. Regarding any war in the world, they just talk about it and that's all. Because they have no money in their hands, nor do they have military power. Therefore, the countries of the world just do whatever they want to do. Other than that, there's probably no solution. So I think on a macro level, the people of many countries generate hatred in their minds. In the end, they might all fall into hell together. Then on a micro level, everyone also more or less frequently has hatred. Today one's mindset might be a bit better. Tomorrow one generates hatred for no apparent reason. 2 days later it becomes even more severe, or 2 days later it gets slightly better. So the minds of us ordinary beings are also extremely unstable. Therefore, in such an era, from the bottom of our hearts we should pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, from a macro perspective to bring peace and safety to the entire world, allowing many sentient beings to survive, relying on the power of their own merit. From a micro perspective, for every individual, it is also necessary to extinguish these fires of greed and anger. They will not bring us any benefits for this life or the next. So everyone should pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. If hatred arises, constantly mindfully revere Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, and you can also depart from enmity. The Universal Gateway chapter also contains this principle. Then, the 11th is the fearlessness of the poison of ignorance. Once perceived objects had disappeared from my mind, as I turned the light of my understanding inward, my body and mind and the entire Dharma realm were as bright and translucent as crystal. For Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he first eliminated all illusory perceived objects, then he turned inward to illuminate his mind. Finally, the Dharma realm and his body and mind became non-dual, transparent inside and out, just like crystal. Regarding crystal, it is probably mainly spoken of in terms of its inner and outer brightness. We sometimes talk about the luminous nature of the mind using a crystal ball and sunlight as an analogy. Just like crystal, it is transparent inside and out, clear and bright, without any obstruction whatsoever. He has already attained such a state. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, relying on this method of inward contemplation, ultimately illuminated his mind and saw the true nature. His mind, just like crystal or lapis lazuli, was completely and entirely revealed, without any obstacles or afflictions. Then this power of dependent origination, therefore I can bring freedom from stupidity to beings whose natures have been so darkened by their dullness that they have had no intention of ever becoming enlightened. Adhyanja refers to ikchantikas. All those who are dull, ignorant, hindered ikchantikas, or those who have severed their roots of virtue, these sentient beings with extremely heavy karmic burdens, may they leave the darkness of ignorance. And indeed, if many people are relatively ignorant, by constantly and respectfully minding Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they can become free from ignorance. This is also found in the Universal Gateway chapter. You can take a look when the time comes. I see that basically they have quite similar contents. Some Dharma masters also say that here it only talks about the result. Relying on Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, one becomes free from these three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. But it doesn't mention how to become free. The Universal Gateway chapter of the Lotus Sutra says, relying on Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, by reciting his name or praying to him, then one will leave behind greed, anger, and ignorance. So in the Lotus Sutra the method has already been taught, the method to distance oneself from these obstacles. Here it only talks about the 14 kinds of fearlessness, the state of fearlessness he attained, having no fears. But how do we attain fearlessness? We too, through praying to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, can also attain such fearlessness. Many of us feel ourselves that we are increasingly lacking in wisdom, unable to awaken our wisdom, acting foolishly, having a poor memory and being very forgetful. We often complain about ourselves, even asking ourselves, why am I so stupid? It is often like this, but in this case, we can frequently pray and recite the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara by constantly seeking this kind of wisdom from him, because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, through his method of inward contemplation, has already dissolved ignorance into the Dharma realm. In some of our sutras and tantras they explain greed, anger, and ignorance as the three kayas and the three kinds of wisdom. Here, for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, regarding greed, anger, and ignorance, through inward contemplation, he dissolved them completely, and then attained such a fearless fruition. So if we go and pray to him, we can enjoy this benefit, because during his process of generating bodhicitta, he resolved that all sentient beings should attain all the merits he possesses. Therefore, if we do not seek it, we cannot possibly obtain it. If we seek it, we can obtain it. For example, if a person is willing to give away a large amount of goods, but we do not ask for them, if we do not contact him, he will not necessarily give them to us. If we go and ask, since he originally has these resources and we have this desire, then we can obtain them. Wow, there is so much thunder today. It is even more intense here than in the Tibetan region. Then to be free from all ignorance. Actually, we sentient beings indeed, whether doing things or practicing the Dharma, have an ignorant side in many aspects. Therefore, we should also pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to greatly open our wisdom. We often think that Bodhisattva Manjushri has this function, and that Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is only known for his compassion. But does he have the ability to open wisdom? Actually, he does. Because through the method of inward contemplation, all these 3 poisons and 5 poisons dissolve for him. Moreover, he thus attained the corresponding wisdom in this regard. Therefore, through our prayers and visualizations, we can also attain it in our own mind streams, so sometimes we can also see. that among the eminent monks and great masters of the past, some of them indeed seem to open their wisdom naturally. This kind of wisdom also comes from various sources. Recently we saw in A Journey to the West that His Holiness would teach directly at any time, without needing any lesson preparation, readying or researching materials, or leafing through various books. He didn't need to check online. Yet the wisdom he personally possessed, when he readily shared it with everyone, brought about such extraordinary benefits for all. This goes without saying. Aren't we reading A Journey to the West right now? So everyone should be clear about this. Next are the 12th and 13th. Here, they are the fearlessness of wishing for a son, and the fearlessness of wishing for a daughter. First is fulfilling wishes, satisfying sentient beings. If they haven't had children, by relying on the blessings of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they can also obtain them. Once perceived objects became interfused and returned to the enlightened nature of hearing, I could travel to distant lands without leaving the place for awakening, and all at the same time, without any disruption, I could travel among the worlds. Here it says, for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he took all the four elements and external objects, these various appearances, and through the method of reflecting inward, finally returned to his true nature, directly realizing the nature of hearing. Then ultimately within the unmoving place for awakening, within the unmoving state of illuminating the mind and seeing the true nature, he enters the world, but does not destroy the world. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara completely enters into our world. While his realization remains unbroken, he can enter the world. Yet all the conventions of the world, traditions and rules, will not be destroyed or defiled, just like a lotus flower that remains unstained by the mud. He can enter this world, but he does not destroy the world. It's not like some of us. Some of us, after practicing a little bit in a solitary place, as soon as we enter the world, we destroy the world. Their concepts, their behaviors, we deny and destroy them one by one. Actually, it shouldn't be like this either. One should possess skillful means to be truly authentic. For some Dharma masters, I think they are quite capable in this regard. No matter what kind of person they meet, to people of different capacities, they will teach the Dharma corresponding to different capacities. When encountering people with different afflictions, they themselves will not be swayed by these things. Instead, they use a different approach to adjust their mind streams as much as possible. This point is also a skillful means which is very important. There I can make offerings to an infinite number of Buddhas throughout all 10 directions, and serve each of these Buddhas as a Dharma prince. For that reason, should childless beings anywhere in the 10 directions wish for sons, I can cause them to have sons who will be virtuous, blessed, and wise. Regarding Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he is able to be in the presence of Tathagatas in the worlds of the 10 directions. In front of Tathagatas as numerous as dust motes in the 10 directions, he makes various offerings, primarily the 7 jewels. Moreover, beside these Tathagatas in the worlds of the 10 directions, he is completely just like Bodhisattva Manjushri, serving as a son of the Dharma king. Because of this reason, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara frequently goes to make offerings in the presence of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. From the biography of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, this can also be seen. Therefore, because of this reason, it enables these sentient beings who are childless, if they wish to have a son, relying on the blessings of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they will give birth to a son endowed with merit and wisdom. For many people nowadays, carrying on the family line, if they have no son to inherit it, it seems that their family lineage will end with this. Therefore, including some of our monastics, what their families worry about the most is that the lineage passed down from their ancestors will not be able to continue anymore. It seems that in the Tibetan region, traditionally there weren't really surnames. They have a name, but this name generally is not going to be Li something or Meng something. It's not like that. So in this regard, there's almost no such concept. Of course, if there is a son who can inherit the family line, that is also very good. But even if there isn't, it doesn't seem to matter much. However, for worldly people nowadays, they might value this point more. For example, if there are 2 children, then one is given to me, to my family, taking my surname, and the other taking his surname. They feel they must carry on this surname. This seems to be what makes it meaningful. There are also some people with different views, forming what is called a dink family. They are always unwilling to do this, and there are people like this too. But no matter what, in the world there are indeed some people who need this, who have this demand. If there is indeed such a strong desire, then praying to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara or praying to Medicine Buddha, this will also help fulfill the wish. But why do some people want to have children? One reason is probably to carry on the family line. Another is to have someone take care of them when they grow old. And another is that in front of others, they feel my family has an heir. But generally speaking, maybe tradition is just a traditional practice. But when someone truly gets old, expecting the children to show filial piety and take care of them is almost extremely rare nowadays. Many people, regardless of whether they are rich or poor, ultimately throw the elderly into nursing homes. Many people clearly have their own children, but the parents also don't expect it. As long as the children can live their own lives, it's fine. Then when I am old, I'll just go to a nursing home. Actually, this is a very sad practice. If you truly don't have children, then you are helpless. There's no other way. If you clearly have children, and these children do not go and take care of their own parents, this is extremely regrettable. Up to now, like in the Tibetan region, they still retain the traditions of the past. Almost everyone, whether they have a job or not, keeps their parents by their side. Moreover, for instance, if there are 3 or 4 children, if the parents always stay in one child's home, the other children will be unhappy and will negotiate with them. Why must you stay at his house and not at mine? This instead becomes a subject of dispute. Why don't they let my parents come to my house? But some people in the cities might not be like this. It's best if you take care of them. When the time comes to pass away, if there's property to divide, I will take my share. There might be this kind of situation. Regardless, in our world, if there are some people who truly have this desire, they can also pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. By doing so, their wishes will be fulfilled and granted. Next is the 13th, the fearlessness of wishing for a daughter. Once my 6 faculties perfected an interconnected functioning and became united in their capacity to clearly perceive everything in all the worlds throughout the 10 directions, my mind became like a great flawless mirror that reflected the emptiness of the matrix of the thus come one. Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, during his causal stages, relied on the perfect penetration of the 6 faculties, as we mentioned earlier, where the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind are all perfectly interfused, because the nature of hearing was perfectly interfused, he clearly eliminated the non-dual truth. He could perceive the luminous mind as non-dual and undifferentiated, of one taste and one essence, without any duality. Such a state encompasses the worlds of the 10 directions, and it establishes the great mirror-like wisdom of the Buddha, because in some texts, emptiness refers to the emptiness of the Tathagata Garbha. He is within such a state of wisdom. He can embrace emptiness, or we can say, regarding all the merits of the Tathagatas, he can encompass, accommodate, and receive them. In the Tibetan translation it is rendered as, because of the nature of emptiness, one realizes the Tathagata Garbha before them. There is also this translation, but regardless, for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, within his wisdom, he can establish the great mirror-like wisdom and establish all these merits related to emptiness and the Tathagata Garbha. I reverently served an infinite number of thus come ones and thoroughly mastered esoteric aspects of the Dharma, receiving them without any loss. Moreover, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he serves, complies with, or practices the esoteric Dharma gateways of the Tathagatas in the 10 directions. There is nothing that Avalokiteshvara does not thoroughly understand. Whether it is esoteric teachings or exoteric teachings, he is completely unobstructed in mastering all dharmas. The dharmas he has obtained are not lacking or missing in the slightest. So the state he achieved, it should be said, because he attained such merit of perfect penetration, the Dharma gateways of the Tathagatas in the 10 directions are also completely and thoroughly mastered, all obtained. So because of this reason, therefore, should childless beings anywhere in the 10 directions wish for daughters, I can cause them to have daughters who are upright, blessed, virtuous, compliant, wholesome in appearance, and liked and respected by all. Because the blessing power of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is like this. Relying on praying to such a Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, it can cause those sentient beings in the world who are without children and are suffering greatly, if they wish to have a daughter. Nowadays, perhaps in this society, there might be a bit more people who want to have a son. Some people think, it's very good to have a son. This kind of practice also exists in the Tibetan region. Generally in the Tibetan region, having one son and one daughter is quite desired. If they are all daughters, people might feel it's a bit unsuccessful, or something like that. If they are all sons, it might not be good either. But if in your family there is a son but no daughter, you can pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to give birth to an extremely dignified, compliant, beautiful and pleasing daughter who is wholesome in appearance. Do not ask for someone with an ugly appearance, or someone with a bad temper, or a daughter who is mentally fragile and very petty. She should be relatively tolerant, possessing a certain level of wisdom and ability. Such a daughter, perhaps when praying for this, one should first communicate this request to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Among the women in the world, including among our monastics, there are also, between our female and male monastics, sometimes when looking at the male monastics, there are all kinds. There are good ones, and there are all kinds of bad ones too. Among the female monastics there are also good people and bad people. So with these good and bad traits, needless to say, in their outer appearances, even in their personalities, indeed, people's so-called personalities, or their so-called wisdom and abilities, are essentially completely different in many ways. So these people in our world, if they are wishing for children, they should first pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. You might not know if Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara has this ability, because this ability might also have a certain relationship with the sentient being's own merits and their karma from past lives. If one did not create virtuous karma in a past life, for a highly dignified and upright son or daughter to appear in this life also has a certain level of difficulty. If the karma they created in their past life is relatively good, such a child might be born, it might be good. But regardless, if worldly people pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, it will also bring you such a relatively lovely son or daughter. The 14th and the last one is the fearlessness of upholding the name. Upholding the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to obtain fearlessness. 14 appear in each of the worlds of this system of 1 billion worlds with its hundreds of billions of suns and moons, 62 times as many Dharma princes as there are sand grains in the river Ganges, to practice the Dharma and to act as exemplars in order to teach beings how to transform themselves. With skill and wisdom, these Dharma princes respond in various ways to what various beings require. Here he says, regarding Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, actually within the entire Trichiliocosm there are worlds where 100 suns and moons appear. In these worlds where the suns and moons appear, there are Dharma princes, great bodhisattvas. As for the great bodhisattvas, they are as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river. So these bodhisattvas act as excellent exemplars in front of sentient beings. They set an example in practicing the Dharma, and then they will in front of different sentient beings begin to teach and transform them, complying with sentient beings. Then, relying on skillful means and wisdom among various sentient beings and within various worlds, they manifest in different ways. In this world, there will be such manifestations. So at this time, what is Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara like? I have broken through to the fundamental source of my ear faculty, thus revealing the ear as a gateway to the wondrous. My body and mind, in a subtle and wondrous way, have encompassed and pervaded the Dharma realm. Therefore I can cause someone who recites my name to gain as many blessings and as much merit as someone else would gain from reciting the names of all those multitudes of Dharma princes, 62 times as many of them as there are sand grains in the river Ganges. The blessings and merit that those two reciters will gain will be the same. Here he says, because at that time Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he had already attained this faculty of perfect penetration. With the faculty of perfect penetration, he developed what can be called a state of non-dual hearing nature. He had already realized such a state. And then the body and mind of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara as a whole are extremely rare. They accommodate or pervade the entire Dharma realm. Why is it that when we pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, here we can immediately receive his blessings? It is just like anywhere in our world. If there is a signal, you open your mobile phone, and as soon as you send a message, the other party receives it in the same way. Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he has attained the entire interfused essence we talked about earlier, this perfectly interfused brilliance, or this fundamental nature of illuminating the mind and seeing the true nature. He has completely realized it all. He has completely realized the truth of the world. Because of this, there is nothing his body and mind do not encompass. There is nothing they do not accommodate. It can be entirely said that, regarding pervading the entire world, he universally pervades the entire world. So in any place, in any corner, if sentient beings pray to him and uphold his name, then just like in this world just now, those Dharma princes and bodhisattvas, as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is exactly the same. He is completely non-dual and undifferentiated from them. We often say that all Buddhas are of one taste and one essence within the Dharma realm. Therefore it can cause sentient beings, if they uphold the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, then it is together with these Dharma princes as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river just mentioned. For all these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if one person upholds the names of Buddhas as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river, and another person upholds the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the merit and blessings of these two people are exactly the same. Or we can say that my upholding the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and upholding the names of bodhisattvas as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river are absolutely identical. So now, in the Dharma-ending age, during our brief human lives, we do not have the time to recite the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as numerous as 62 times the sand grains in the Ganges river. We do not have this time, nor do we have this energy. But by solely reciting the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he represents all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the immeasurable and boundless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So this is indeed what we sometimes call a condensed version. It is something very essential. Doesn't the world have things like this now too? Like the microchips we talk about, or some extremely concentrated things that are made very small and can be carried with you. Thus, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he is the collective embodiment of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or of all the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past, present, and future. When we talked about the merits of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's heart mantra earlier, we also mentioned this. So for us in this world, this truly is very important. World-honored one, the power of my name alone is equal to the power of all those many other names. because by means of my spiritual practice I have completely broken through to enlightenment. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, "World-honored one, this name of mine and the names of so many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, there is no difference between them. This is because I have been practicing continuously for a long time and ultimately attained the perfect penetration of Bodhi. I have attained the Bodhi of perfect penetration of the 6 faculties. Because of this reason, we should frequently, when everyone has nothing else to do, you can either chant Om Mani Padme Hum or chant the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara more often. This is still, we feel it is very important. Everyone should also frequently recite it like this. In this way, I cause beings to develop such merit that they will have nothing to fear in 14 kinds of dangerous situations. So with the 14 kinds of fearlessness we have discussed above, allowing sentient beings to attain perfect merit and wisdom, when sentient beings are trapped in hardship, their bodies pressed by boundless suffering, the wondrous wisdom power of Avalokiteshvara can rescue the world from its suffering. Therefore, for the sentient beings in our world, if they encounter some difficulties or suffering, at such times they rely on the wondrous wisdom power of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to rescue the world. So for us, in this world, everyone truly needs to recite the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. You must pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. This is extremely important. Sometimes I think about when His Holiness was alive in the past. He said, this current era is very unfavorable. Everyone must pray frequently. Now it seems, although it has been 20 years since His Holiness passed into parinirvana, but comparing when he was alive with now, the difference is incredibly vast, including the merit of sentient beings, people's faith, and the opportunities to propagate the Dharma in all aspects. Many of these are, thinking about it now, wow, the previous era was very bright. It should be said that it was very good. I have this feeling. Perhaps in another 20 years, or another 40 years, or in another 200 years, who knows what this world will become? Will it become darker and darker, or will it become brighter and brighter? This is quite uncertain. So regardless of what happens, I very much believe in the extraordinary abilities of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Whether it is for us personally or for the entire world, everyone should frequently make it a habit, whether getting up or going to sleep, or normally when you are taking a walk, riding a car or carrying water, at any given time, to habitually recite the names of some Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the mantras of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is extremely important. Some people say, just resting in the nature of mind is enough. Chanting these mantras and practices is a kind of conceptual elaboration. There might be people who say this. But indeed, perhaps in the conventional world, these dependent originations are indispensable. When you have already reached the highest state, perhaps you will not need these. But for us, this is still quite difficult. Then it goes on to say, further, world-honored one, because I have broken through to enlightenment and have reached the final destination of the supreme path, I have also mastered 4 immeasurably effortless and wondrous powers. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, world-honored one, I still have one more thing to report. Because of the perfect penetration of the 6 faculties, I have already cultivated and realized the supreme path. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara first thoroughly understood it and then began to cultivate and realize it. Sometimes, when we have a slight understanding of the Dzogchen view, we feel there is no need to practice. Actually, it's not like that. First one thoroughly understands, and then one practices. The Zen school also says this. Practice is very important. Then, because of this, what else did he attain? 4 kinds of inconceivable, effortless and excellent wondrous merits. So what are these like? Below we will discuss the 4 inconceivable merits. Some great masters divide them into the inconceivable merit of the body, the inconceivable merit of speech, the first inconceivable merit of mind, and the second inconceivable merit of mind. They divide it like this. Some divide it based on whether the body and mind are the same or different. It is divided in this way. So the first one is explained like this. First, once I had realized the wondrousness within the wonder at the heart of my hearing, and once my hearing had disappeared into the essence of my mind, my hearing became indistinguishable from seeing, smelling, tasting, tactile awareness, and cognition. All six were completely interfused into a single pure and magnificent awareness. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, "In the very beginning I attained the wondrousness within the wonder at the heart of my hearing, the wondrousness within the wonder at the heart of hearing." In the Tibetan translation, it says, "extremely rare, this extremely rare heart of hearing." The original face of this kind of mind, it can also be understood this way. Or we can say, in the very beginning I completely attained this illumination of the mind and seeing of the true nature through the heart of hearing, and then my hearing disappeared into the essence of my mind. This mind nature of his mind, the most wondrous, the most essential part, when he attained this, he distanced himself from what we call the external grasping of hearing. They were all discarded. Then regarding seeing, hearing, tactile awareness, and cognition, they cannot be separated, they cannot be divided. Because for us ordinary beings, seeing, hearing, tactile awareness, and cognition are all separated. The eyes can see, the ears can hear, the mind can cognize, but can they be used interchangeably? It's impossible. However, for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, because he attained this most precise wisdom, his inner path is entirely interfused and perfectly integrated. All six were completely interfused into a single pure and magnificent awareness. He achieved a state that is exceptionally pure and perfect. This awakening of the Tathagatagarbha had been thoroughly realized. Therefore I can assume many different and wondrous forms, and can proclaim numberless esoteric and efficacious mantras. So for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he can manifest in a variety of different, immeasurable and boundless appearances, wondrous forms and various manifestations. He can also proclaim different esoteric and efficacious mantras. There are so many Dharma gateways of Avalokiteshvara. As soon as we open the Dharma teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, here is a four-armed Avalokiteshvara, there is a two-armed Avalokiteshvara, here is a 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, there is a six-armed Avalokiteshvara. There are an immense variety of forms of Avalokiteshvara. The heart mantras also come in various numbers of syllables. Very long ones, medium ones, short ones, there is every kind. Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he has fully realized the Dharma realm of all phenomena. Because of this reason, in front of sentient beings, as long as it is beneficial to sentient beings, he will manifest various images and then speak various Dharma gateways, mantras, liturgies, and so on. So everyone should not feel confused as to why there are so many of these Dharma gateways. You see in some of the Tang dynasty esoteric teachings, the practices of Avalokiteshvara are also extremely numerous. In Tibetan esoteric Buddhism, there are also very many. Especially within our Dharma teachings, the practices of Avalokiteshvara come in all kinds of images. Sometimes it is a wrathful form, sometimes a peaceful form, sometimes a semi-wrathful form, sometimes in union with a consort, sometimes a solitary figure. Every kind of form exists. The dharmas discovered by various tertons are all extremely rich and diverse. So we should not wonder which one is real, which one is fake, which one is reasonable, which one is unreasonable. From now on, everyone should understand these principles. Because when we teach the Shurangama Sutra, it is not merely a sutra, it should be like some of the principles in our worldly life. For example, regarding a camera flash, we only know how to turn it on and off, but we don't know the ultimate principle behind it. Why does it flash at that specific moment? Why does it not flash at another moment? So the blessings of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, why do they manifest in that way? Why are there so many images of him? Why are there so many mantras and Dharma gateways for him? These principles are actually mentioned within the Shurangama Sutra. Here, why does Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara have so many images? It explains it all below. Because he perfectly encompasses the world and thoroughly understands all worlds. Therefore, as long as it is beneficial to sentient beings, he will immediately manifest, just like some of our people who are particularly skillful in cultural and creative product design. Whatever the clients below want, you immediately create such a thing. If they want a white bag, he immediately makes a white bag, and if they want a black bag, he immediately makes a black bag. Now, according to the client's demands, he immediately changes the appearance. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is exactly like this too. I may appear with 1 head, 3 heads, 5 heads, 7 heads, 9 heads, 11 heads, as many as 108 heads, or 1,000 heads, or 10,000 heads and more, even as many as 84,000 indestructible heads. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara has many forms, 1 face and 4 arms, 1 face, 3 faces, like the one we have here with 1 head. What we often see is perhaps, for example, 4-armed Avalokiteshvara, or what we frequently see is perhaps, for example, 4-armed Avalokiteshvara. Amogapasha Avalokiteshvara, who has 3 faces, there are also 4-faced ones, and 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, just like this, perhaps a few types. But actually in different liturgies there are very many. Some have 7 heads, 9 heads, 11 heads, and even up to 100 heads, 108 heads. Then 1,000 heads, 10,000 heads, and also 84,000 indestructible heads. Indestructible means extremely solid, the kind of Vajra indestructible head. It is a description for each of the heads. In any case, 84,000 heads. You see, when we look at the 1,000-armed, 1,000-eyed form, we feel, wow, that's so many. Actually, 84,000 we might not have seen in the liturgies, a practice of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara with 84,000 heads. Perhaps there isn't one. But in reality he can manifest this. Then regarding the arms, it is the same. I may appear with 2 arms, 4 arms, 6 arms, 8 arms, 10 arms, 12 arms, or with 14, 16, 18, 20, or 24 arms, or with as many as 108 arms, or with 1,000 arms, or 10,000 arms and more, even as many as 84,000 arms, with each hand forming a mudra. Mudra means hand gesture. It means that, at that time, regarding those yes, all these various kinds of, including his arms, they are also from 2 arms to 6 arms, 8 arms. It seems these are all even numbers. Perhaps 1 arm, perhaps a single arm wouldn't look very good. Many of the arms we see are in pairs. So regarding this principle, it is not just Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. In the future, especially in the Tibetan esoteric tradition, there are those with particularly many arms. There are also ones in Han Buddhism, including Bodhisattva Manjushri Yamantaka. So for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sometimes why do they have so many arms, so many heads and so many forms? This is in order to deliver sentient beings. At that time it seems the 6th patriarch also said, I can speak of 1 prajna, all the way up to 6 prajnas, or 84,000 prajnas. Why is that? Because sentient beings have 84,000 worldly afflictions. Therefore, since their internal afflictions of subtle defilements number 84,000, then there are all sorts of varieties. So some of us in the world today as well, people are a bit different. For example, if we make a toy, some are black toys, their helmets are black, some are white. So for 100 children you lay out 100 items here. Which one do you like? Perhaps what each child chooses will be different. Therefore, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas use wisdom to observe what sentient beings like, and which arms and which heads will be useful to them, so he manifests in this way. It is not only Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara who can manifest so many forms. There are also other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is the reason why they also manifest so many forms. Generally, when we go to Theravada Buddhist countries like Thailand or Myanmar, there is only one Buddha. Images of many other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are basically unseen. But in the Tibetan tradition and some other lineages, indeed Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have an abundance of forms, including the 500 arhats. They also have various appearances. Some people might wonder, but why aren't the 500 arhats uniform? Just like students in our schools, wouldn't it be nice to wear the same uniform? But in reality, it is not like that. They need to deliver sentient beings or manifest in various ways before sentient beings. So every time we see the 500 arhats, why is each of their appearances different? And then for the 16 arhats, why is the item held in each person's hand different? So all of these have specific meanings. Then regarding his eyes, it is also the same. My hands may have 2 eyes, 3 eyes, 4 eyes, 9 eyes. Both single and double eyes exist. As many as 108 eyes, or 1,000 eyes, or 10,000 eyes and more, even as many as 84,000 pure and magnificent eyes. And Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, in these forms, by displaying kindness, by inspiring awe, and by manifesting samadhi and wisdom, I can rescue and shelter beings, allowing them to attain great mastery and ease. The forms of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, sometimes they are compassionate and gentle, peaceful forms, sometimes they are awe-inspiring and wrathful. Just like Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, sometimes it is our Hayagriva, extremely wrathful, various awe-inspiring forms. Sometimes they appear in meditative concentration, the form of the dhyana mudra. Sometimes they represent wisdom, holding scripture volumes, holding a precious sword, and so on, various forms. After we have studied this time in the future, when we see various bodily forms of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you must remember the Shurangama Sutra actually explains that for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, these different images have their own esoteric meanings. This point must be understood. Otherwise, some of our Buddhist practitioners as well, some people ask, why is it that, for example, Bodhisattva Manjushri has so many Dharma instruments and weapons? Why do the Dharma protectors hold so many things in their hands? Why is it like this? Why are there various forms in the shrine room, like Kalachakra or Yamantaka? Wow, they're mudras and images. Why are there so many? Actually, these are not many at all. According to some other grand practice liturgies in Tibetan Buddhism, just their mudras and symbols alone require so much explanation, especially what is taught in those liturgies. There truly could be 84,000 different images. So if we Buddhists know these principles, we will also understand them in our own minds. And when explaining to others, it's not just using some vague reasoning to brush them off. You should be able to understand these. So this is how all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are. This is about bodily forms. Although it is just one Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, his bodily forms have 1,000 variations and a myriad of postures. Everyone should understand this. Then the second inconceivable merit, you could also call it the inconceivable merit of speech, or the inconceivable merit of fearlessness. Second, due to my practice of listening and contemplating, I broke free of the 6 kinds of sense object, such that I was no more obstructed by them than a sound is obstructed by a low wall. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, through contemplating the nature of hearing, he ultimately and completely broke free of the 6 sense objects and their spheres, and all external forms. So for him, just like sound, it passes through a wall without being obstructed. Like our visual consciousness, it cannot see outside if there is a wall in between. It cannot see through, but for sound, it penetrates the wall. It penetrates the courtyard wall and cannot be obstructed. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is just the same. He penetrates just like sound, and walls will not obstruct him. Of course, if the soundproofing isn't very good, it's unobstructed. If some places are particularly well soundproofed, there is some obstruction, but here he is like sound passing through an unobstructed wall. Then what did he attain? Therefore I have the wondrous power to appear in various forms, each of them reciting various mantras. Because these forms and these mantras have the power to deliver beings from danger, I am known in countless lands throughout the 10 directions as one who causes beings to have nothing to fear. He says because he is completely interfused, just like the signal we mentioned, if it is present both inside and outside, then he is able to manifest each and every various kind of form. Here sometimes he manifests the form of an animal, sometimes the form of a human, sometimes the form of an African, sometimes the form of an Asian. Various forms can be manifested. And he can also recite sometimes he recites Om Mani Padme Hum Huri, sometimes the Great Compassion Mantra, and other various mantras. When he says mantras here, it is not only entirely what we consider mantras, it might also include liturgies and different texts. These forms and these mantras, these appearances and these mantras can give boundless sentient beings the power of fearlessness, giving these sentient beings freedom from fear. Indeed, when we ourselves encounter a little bit of fear, by chanting Om Mani Padme Hum or Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, it seems that naturally we ourselves attain this. We often experience this, right? Chanting Amitabha, Amitabha, or when we are very afraid, praying to Buddha, Amitabha, praying to the Guru, or whatever we pray to, immediately eliminates this terror in our hearts. This is how he, through different forms and different methods, like images of Avalokiteshvara and so on, can eliminate the fear in the hearts of sentient beings. I am known in countless lands throughout the 10 directions as one who causes beings to have nothing to fear. I am known in countless lands throughout the 10 directions as one who causes beings to have nothing to fear. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, my reputation is quite great. In the lands of the worlds throughout the 10 directions, they all say I am the bestower of fearlessness. Indeed, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara bestows fearlessness upon boundless sentient beings. He is a true guide of peace. He truly brings to the boundless sentient beings in the world this hope of fearlessness, brings this strength, brings this eloquence. Then, regarding the third one, it should be the inconceivable merit of severing greed. Third, by means of the fundamental wondrous practice that led me to break through to enlightenment, I reached the pure source of the ear faculty, and therefore in whatever worlds I travel to, I can cause beings to disregard their bodies and their valuable possessions in their quest for my compassionate aid. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, because by relying on the practice of the perfect penetration of the ear faculty, ultimately the fundamental wondrous perfect penetration, he has completely and thoroughly understood this original inherent nature. For this reason, reaching the pure source of the faculty, purifying the nature of hearing that he originally possessed, the root of the nature of hearing has been completely purified. So for this reason, in the process of his travels throughout the worlds, all sentient beings in the world, because they see Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, or because of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, they can take off all the precious jewels from their bodies and then pray, beseeching Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, compassionately bless me, compassionately protect me. They will act like this. So we all know in any place, even in areas like the South where they might not have formal faith, they are often willing to take out some money or take off some precious jewels and offer them to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, to Goddess Guan Yin, the Guan Yin who brings children and so on, relying on him to pray for blessings. Even these very stingy sentient beings are willing to take the money off themselves to make offerings. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says here, because I have realized the essence of illuminating the mind, for this reason, in the entire process of his delivering sentient beings, all sentient beings, just as when we see Tara, many wealthy people in the world take off the gold, silver and precious jewels from their bodies and offer them all to Tara. There are quite a lot of stories like this, right? Well, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is just like this too. Actually, in any place, if there is an image of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, If there are images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they might take the money and precious jewels off their bodies and offer them. Doing this is actually a matter of extremely great merit. Then why do they make offerings like this? Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara possesses majestic power. If he did not have majestic power, generally speaking, people would not do this. For example, if I had a little bit of majestic power, others would make offerings to me. If I had no majestic power at all, there are plenty of beggars like me out there, so people wouldn't necessarily make offerings. So why do we make offerings to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara? Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara possesses majestic power, therefore wherever there is an image of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, his merit is also present. Thus, people often generate the intention to pray and beseech, asking Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to compassionately bless and embrace them. This is also his majestic power. If he hadn't attained such realization, it wouldn't be like this. So I think in the future, in different parts of the world, we might build some images of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, including in some places where Buddhism is not very flourishing, like Africa or other places. We can also place some images of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and Guru Rinpoche. Perhaps for the fortune of the local sentient beings, what we call financial fortune and blessed fortune, this fortune can gradually, slowly be restored. If they have this kind of fortune, then it might be much easier to do many things. In some remote places they lack cultural foundation, and they also lack the fortune for spiritual practice. They don't have good fortune in this regard either. This fortune is actually a kind of invisible power. Nowadays, some countries in the world have a cultural foundation or have religious significance within them. In this case, even if many disasters occur, as soon as the storm passes and the sky clears, they recover very easily. In some places, if they don't have such good fortune, then they suffer a crushing defeat and cannot recover. We humans are like this too. If a person has a little bit of merit, they might encounter some disasters along the way. For example, some people's businesses failed midway, and they lost their entire family fortune. But after a while, they start to rise again. I saw that Yu Minhong, he said he previously had tens of billions. A few years ago, due to some policy shifts, he ended up being in an extremely pitiful state, but now it seems his stocks have grown to around 10 billion. And he is planning to do something in his hometown, making some investments. So for some people, there are slight differences in their fortune. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he possesses this kind of, whether you call it blessing or merit, and if we go and pray to him, for instance, if we rely on a person who is particularly lucky, a particularly capable person, if we make friends with them, they bring me a lot of good luck or help. If the person I am associating with is a particularly bad and evil person, then associating with them might bring me bad luck. By the same token, when we seek refuge, we must definitely seek refuge in the excellent Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Praying to them is very important. Let's cover a little bit more below. Fourth, I have realized the ultimate, which is the Buddha mind. This is mainly for benefiting sentient beings and also for perfecting one's own aspirations. Fourth, I have realized the ultimate, which is the Buddha mind. Therefore, in all lands I can make offerings of precious valuables, not only to the thus come ones, throughout all 10 directions, but also to beings in the 6 destinies, throughout the Dharma realm. Here he says Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara had at that time already attained the true mind of the Buddha, because he realized the ultimate. He attained ultimate realization. For this reason, he can make offerings of various precious valuables to the Tathagatas in the 10 directions. Moreover, he equally treats all beings in the 6 destinies throughout the Dharma realm, also making offerings to them, or you could call it making offerings above and giving charity below, or caring for them and paying attention to them, equally cherishing them, the beings in the 6 destinies. Then, in this way, As a result, those who seek a spouse shall obtain a spouse, those who seek a child shall have a child, those who wish for samadhi shall gain samadhi, those who wish for a long life shall live long, and those who seek the great nirvana shall attain it. Because Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is someone who has attained such an ultimate fruition. Because of this reason, he has the ability to make offerings above and give charity below. Therefore, if we pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, grant me the realization of the nature of the mind, he can also create this condition for me. If I wish to obtain a spouse, children, or attain samadhi concentration, a long life, or even the great nirvana, in short, everything, if even the great nirvana can be granted, then there's no need to mention anything else. When we study the introduction to the Mahayana, generally others, including beings like Lord Indra, cannot grant the great nirvana, they cannot grant major attainments. But Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, having already attained such realization himself, even if we wish to attain the highest Buddhahood, he can also bestow it upon us. Then there is a section below which should be the summary of this passage. How did the Buddha ask? The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. By the means that I have described, I entered through the gateway of the ear faculty and perfected the inner illumination of samadhi. My mind, that had once been dependent on perceived objects, developed self-mastery and ease. By entering the current of the awakened ones and entering samadhi, I became fully awake. This then is the best method. The Buddha at that time asked Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, among all the perfect penetrations, which one do you choose? At that time, the 24 bodhisattvas we mentioned earlier, each of them, some said, for me the object of form is very important. Some said the object of smell, some said the object of taste, some said the ear faculty, some said the nose faculty, all kinds of methods. In the 24 dharmas we covered earlier, every disciple had attained realization, and at that time Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he started from the gateway of the ear faculty. He chose this, and he felt this was the inner illumination of samadhi, developing self-mastery by relying on his own mind. By entering into this true nature, he entered the current of true nature. He was not flowing against the current into samsara. Because of his inward contemplation, he truly attained this samadhi and attained the fulfillment of bodhi. So from his perspective, the ear faculty is the best for all realizations. Relying on the ear faculty is the best method. Therefore, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara always feels that sound is still very important. World-honored one, that other Buddha that thus come one, praised my mastery of this method for breaking through to enlightenment. At that time, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara said to the Buddha, at that time it should have been the Tathagata Avalokiteshvara. In front of Tathagata Avalokiteshvara, having perfectly penetrated like this, then this Buddha also praised me for having mastered the Dharma gateway of perfect penetration. Before his great assembly, he bestowed on me his own name, he who hears the cries of the world. Then during the great assembly, he prophesied for Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. His name was also bestowed as a prophecy at that time. Because I hear throughout all 10 directions with perfect clarity, my name, he who hears the cries of the world, is known in all the worlds throughout the 10 directions. Because he observes and hears the sounds of the 10 directions and ultimately realize their perfection and luminosity, for this reason he is very famous in all 10 directions of the world. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, highly renowned. So Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara said, the reason I am so famous is that actually the former Tathagata also made a prophecy. I realized the truth relying on this Dharma gateway. The name he gave me at that time was chosen in this way too, and so it is now because of my realization at that time. Indeed, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, among all the 8 great bodhisattvas, Bodhisattva Manjushri and Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara should be the most famous. At least in the Han region, it is likely so. It is like this in the Tibetan region too, and in India as well. Perhaps in some Western countries or some African countries, many people there might not necessarily know the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, but in the future, firstly they must also come to know the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. There should also be some images of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, including large images and small images, even very, very small ones. If a country has a small image of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and Guru Rinpoche, then in the future it's possible that all aspects of their lives will undergo some positive transformations. So in this regard, everyone should also try to make an effort, and we should also frequently pray to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara.
Bandara Badma Sadar